Okay, today I want to do a little bit of a video on my knife shop, Creely Blades knife shop, and just the tools that I use and what I have so far at this point in the journey. And yeah, I'll walk you through it. First is the Esteem grinder, which is fantastic. It's very, very steady, very little vibration. It just does what it's supposed to do. The tracking works well. There's a 2 horsepower Leeson motor. I got the variable speed KV Genesis. And if you're thinking about getting a grinder and you're thinking about saving a couple dollars and not getting the variable speed, don't do that. Get the variable speed. You'll be glad that you did, and you won't burn steel as much. And there's just a lot of controls you can have. Now, just a quick look at this. There's a Scotch-Brite gun on there now. So I did one little thing. So I got a reverse switch so I can go the other way. One thing that happens with the reverse switch, and you can see it happening there, the tracking gets all out of whack. So anyway, you got to change the tracking a bit when you run it the other way. But I want to try to grind hollow grinds with a small wheel, and I needed to have it be able to do reverse, so I saw that on another video. I wanted to give it a try. I haven't done it yet. I also have the cool mist there to cool things down, and I have to run an air line. My air compressor is, with the magic of the iPhone, boop, over there. So I haven't gotten that run yet. So I have to run across the floor, and that's a little awkward. So yeah, this is sort of the centerpiece of the workshop. And I have my jig here, which you probably have seen in other videos if you've seen my other videos. Screwed it there, offset it, Corian on the bottom, supersized. I made that supersized work rest there, and underneath I threaded in a thumb screw so I can very accurately tilt this to do my grinds. I grind with a jig, and I'm not ashamed of it. Comes out much straighter grinds. For me. So that's one piece. Now let's go to some slightly less interesting things here, but important. 1, hearing protection. 2, respirator, and get a good one. This is a 3M with the charcoal filters or whatever they put in there. Look like charcoal. And then I use this guy for the eye protection. Seems to work a little better, and even keeps a little bit out of my head. Here's one of the workbenches, the drill press. This guy gets a workout. I also went over, I replaced that chuck with a South Bend chuck that was 100 times better than the Skill stock one that it came with. This is a little Harbor Freight milling machine, and I haven't employed it quite as much as I'd like to yet, but when I start venturing a little bit into folders, friction folders and whatnot, that guy's going to get a little bit of work, and I'm sure I want something better soon. Odds and ends, sundry tools. I use this guy for Kydex when I do the ramp, the thumb ramp on the back of a taco-style Kydex sheath. I warm it up. I do it in a press, then I come out here with my heat gun. I warm it up, and I push that into it to make my thumb ramp. Now, the next part here, a couple other things. The shop, this part is a little bit of a disaster, and we'll talk about that a little bit. I have a Fisher anvil there. It's not really set up to use that much right now. I have a forge over here. I'm not a forge guy primarily. I'm more of a stock removal guy, but I have these things just for fun, and we've all watched Forged in Fire, so I wanted to mess around with it. And it gives me the ability to do a quick heat treat on occasion. Won't get into it too much. Over there is the Herrig Super 612 surface grinder. Man, are they fantastic for certain stuff. Some guys change them to belts. I don't know if I'm going to do that or not. Up above there, that you can't see it too well, but right above there, that board near the top of the Herrig is a bunch of my steel. And most of that is of the 01, 1075, stuff that I can prototype knives and heat treat here in the handy dandy forge. Over here, we got the infamous Harbor Freight buffer. This is the best buffer I think Harbor Freight makes, which means it's just okay. I did lop off the threads and put on a cone so that I can switch out. To different buffing wheels in a real fast way. So that's a great mod to a buffer. Here are my various collection. This is just some of them of belts. That will be kind of one of your biggest items in most shops. These are belts. Now, let me get back a little bit. I did some recent updating here to this. This monstrosity, this cart, if I can get back far enough and you can see it all. This is this piece on the end. Let's deal with that. This is a turret dust collector. It's got this thing here where you, if I can do it without killing myself. It's got filter bags in there, and that shakes them off. And then there's a tray at the bottom. It doesn't hold a ton. It wouldn't be good for like a wood shop, but it picks up fine dust. It can pick up metal. However, you wouldn't want to do that if you were already picking up wood, because you could set something on fire. So I'm using it predominantly for the wood and the dust, not the metal. Actually, when I grind metal, this whole cart, I don't grind a ton of metal on it. Most of the heavy metal grinding happens over here on this guy. This is more handle and touch up and these sorts of things. So here is the cheap Harbor Freight 4x36. I love it. It's fantastic. You got a 2-inch wheel. It moves a little bit slower than like a normal metal. Some guys speed this up by changing the ratio on that belt, but it's not very powerful at this speed, so I can't imagine running it faster. It's really more for wood, shaping handles with that wheel. You know, if you can't afford a 2x72 with a small wheel adapter, this is a great way to get that done. My dust collection here is a shade on the Bush League side, but the dust was getting out of control in the shop, so I had to do something, and I went to Woodcraft 3 times and rigged up, it might be a good word for it, some dust collection, but it works. It's mostly 4-inch stuff. I got the big one there for that grinder. I got the one on the end for that grinder. I got the plastic, I think they call these blast gates, but it works great. It takes care of so much dust. Speaking of that, just today, this bad boy arrived. I also got that light there, LED light shining right on my work, by the way. But just put that air filtration up. So between that and the dust collection over here, and here's where I make the most dust, I'm hoping to really reduce the dust situation in here. Even with a respirator, well, to give you a sense of it, you can hardly tell what color my motorcycles are. My kids were writing things in the dust and making patterns on there. Even the patterns got covered with dust. So that is what I'm trying to solve. So here is, this is a homemade vertical grinder. Currently this belt, I don't even know exactly what size this belt is. The fellow that sold it to me had all these belts he had made. They're only 1 inch. And this can be a 2x72. So what I will end up doing is moving this and this. There's other holes here that you can see down to here, and then it becomes a 2x72, which I look forward to when I run out of those belts. This has a 2 horsepower Baldor. I did have a 1 horsepower Dayton on it, but I got a deal on a couple 2 horsepower motors, and the one of them I put on here, so this went from 1 to 2. Although the KB Genesis, if you're only running 110, will only do a horsepower and a half, which is plenty, which is fine. So this guy's up to 1.5 horsepower now. It's variable speed. And I had the Kalamazoo 2x48 over there. But let's just finish on this. So you got the small wheel attachment here. You can put in different size wheels up here. So that's handy. You got a flat platen here. And then you got the drive wheel. I think this guy is a 4 or 5 incher. So between those, that gives you a lot of flexibility. It is variable speed with the KB Genesis. Now, I got 2 motors, and I could have bought another one of those, but they're like $300-400. So what I did, and actually a fellow that sold it to me, his name is also Gary, had this switch. And so 2x48's this guy, and the horizontal grinder's this guy. So I can switch back and forth. Most knife shops are single guy operations, so it's not like all these machines are running at the same time. So I'm able to kind of maximize my my VFD there between these 2 machines. So this machine is the Kalamazoo. The new models look a little different than this. And this, I really like this Kalamazoo. I've gotten a lot of mileage out of it. Very simple work platform. I do a lot of my handle shaping and stuff. There's a 6-inch wheel down there. And what's interesting about this, I believe the mount, let's come over here, take a look at this. This is the original motor. The mount on there, I think that's called a C plate mount. And there's a little lip here. It's hard to see on the video. There's a little lip here. And the Kalamazoo has a circle, if you look, right in here, and it fits in that lip, and you put 2 bolts in, it can slide back and forward. But long story short, I went from a 1/2 power on the Kalamazoo, which if you pushed it would stall out on you, to now, this is a 2 horsepower Leeson, same one that's on that guy, running at a 1.5 horsepower, which is more than enough. So that's a heck of an upgrade. There's a website online, maybe I'll put it in the notes. For about $200 or so, you can get a 3-phase motor and an inexpensive VFD. And that is what I'm using to run the hair rig over here. Hopefully it's enough light to see it. I have it down in there to keep the dust off of it and whatnot, because it is not sealed like the KB Genesis. But it has remote switches. So when I turn the surface grinder on and then turn it off, that winds down in about 5 seconds. If with a regular just power cut on and off, that thing will spin for like 1.5 minutes. And if you try to get your fingers in there and move what you're doing on there, bad things can happen. So it's nice to have that slow down feature that the VFD gives you. It also is a slow startup. It doesn't just kick the power on. And most of these things you can get pretty cheap, but they're 3-phase. And you're like, oh, I don't have 3-phase in my house. Well, you use a VFD, and it works wonderfully. That guy's like $120 for that VFD. And goes from 110 to the 3-phase. That's only a 1 horsepower motor. So it's fantastic. It's a fantastic way to do it. So if you had something like this Kalamazoo and you wanted to upgrade it, like I did, you could do that and not break the bank. Then you'd have that Baldor motor. That's the 1 horsepower Dayton up there, but you'd have that Baldor motor. And what I'm thinking about doing with that is making a nicer buffer, finding a cone, and I'm sure they make them. I just got to find them to put on the end of that, put it on a stand. Now I have a really nice buffer. And this is just a relatively inexpensive bandsaw. I'll tell you what, I hardly do anything on this guy anymore because I do it all on my Harbor Freight metal saw. This guy predominantly cuts kydex for me. So, but it's piped in, keeps the dust down. And over here, this is sort of my sanding station of sorts. You know, this is just a tile from the Home Depot, but it's perfectly flat. It was like $3. I have my little scriber there. This is a great way to scribe. I had one of those little jigs, I think maybe from US Knife Maker or one of them, to do my scribing, but you know, it did not work nearly as well as this. I got this, I think, is at Char Tools, and I get the perfect line in the perfect spot every time, and it works great. Some odds and ends. I use this little tray. I got that at Target. So when I'm building a knife, I keep the parts to each one in this tray. That's fantastic. Here's a little piece of rail. I surface ground the top of this, and it took me an enormous amount of effort to get a flat portion up here. I didn't even take it all the way to the edges because maybe I want that rounded edge sometimes. But I got a nice flat spot on top. I taped it off. Gonna brush it and paint it. And I think I may use that for leather work. Here is my knife. I want to get an actual knife vise, but I found this guy at a flea market, and I made some leather jaws here. So I hold this, I put the blade in there with it's already taped up, and sand it in there, and then I lay it flat here and put a clamp on it when I'm doing the sides of the scales. Sometimes I use the Corian for blocks when I need them. I have micarta and some various scale material, stabilized, whole sheets of sandpaper, pretty typical stuff. I have my pin materials. I have some more pin materials here. Here's an interesting pin material. This black stuff, it's called Durlin. It's like a plastic, it's a little flexy, but it actually finishes pretty nice. I did knife in that. I was pretty pleased with how it worked. And last but not least, and this was on my $1,000 knife shop video, this is the Harbor Freight with the swag. I just got the swag plate and put it in there, and saved a couple bucks rather than getting the whole swag getup. But super handy tool, super handy tool, ridiculously handy tool, I would even say. You know, I cut pin material. Sometimes I split scales on it. You know, ironwood will dull a regular bandsaw pretty quickly, so these blades are, you know, a little better equipped to do that. That moves a little slower. Of course, the vise itself, which another little interesting arrangement here. I think I'd like to do a little better job on these, but these are magnetic, and I made this to bend knives into shape. So eventually I want to make just a slightly more elegant version of that, but it gets the job done. There's the little Dyson I clean up little messes with, and yeah, so that's the Creely Blades workshop as of March 3rd, 2000 or March 2017. I think it's like the 9th. I don't remember. But yeah. So if you're wondering what it takes to build some fixed blade knives, this is what I use. You can do it with less, and you can do it with more. But this is what I'm doing it with.